Hello everybody, Adrian Plus here.
Yes, and Bridget. Hello.
And it is, unless I'm mistaken, it is number 208 of Sounding the Shallows. Is that correct?
Well, as far as I know, it is, yeah.
Excellent. Right. So, we had a letter, we had an email recently, didn't we?
I mean, last week, I suppose it maybe ended up a bit silly, I don't know, but we were talking about a tsunami of bananas that hit our local cafe, church cafe, and also all sorts of other local organisations that are set up to help the community and be part of the community. And we don't know how this happened, whether one of the supermarkets over-ordered, but certainly there were trays of bananas distributed around the area.
Many bananas.
Many bananas. And I was mentioning what a joy that tiny thing gave to people, as just about everybody who came into our cafe ended up with a bunch of bananas, and how it there was lots of conversation, but also it was a very unifying thing. And it was a moment where something so small could bring a ridiculous amount of laughter and joy. But, as you say, we had an email.
We had actually a very difficult email, because it was from someone who, whenever I mention bananas, criticizes what I say about them.
Bananas.
No, I'm not going to be flippant about it. This is very serious. Bananas are important to me. And I want to read you what she said in response, because I think it will give you some idea of the mind of an anti-banana. She calls herself banana hater-in-chief. And I think it'd be good to read these words. I'm going to read them with the passion that I think she feels. Do you understand what I mean? In order to be fair. This is it. It's called Going Bananas. This is it. As banana hater-in-chief, it is my solemn duty to say, good grief, a banana avalanche, I can but blanch. Banana bread, oh, what dread. Banana cake, throw it in a lake. Banana milkshake, for goodness sake, I spit at banana split. That's venomous, isn't it?
Yes, it really
I am
is.
intensely bitter about the banana fritter, and you may as well pour on mustard to banana with custard. As for the most heinous villain of them all, banoffee pie, it must die. So there we are, very, very angry indeed. And all I can say is that, I hope and pray that one day this person's attitude to bananas will change. I do just want to say one serious thing, though, that the banana hater-in-chief is also someone, and I'm quite serious, I have a huge admiration for. And the reason I have great admiration for her is that she is a person of immense courage. Yeah. And I won't go into why, but this week is not a bad time to talk about
It's been all
courage.
about courage. All about courage. And well, obviously local politics, it's not all about courage, but we're not going to talk about that, because the two things that have overwhelmed not just us, but I think just about everybody in our country, and actually in many places all over the world, is there are stories of courage this week. And when I said there were two, actually there were 40 today that we heard, weren't they? As we heard in the UK about the 40 veterans from D-Day who are still amazingly alive and able to tell their stories, the youngest being 98.
Yeah. I can't remember how many are 100 years old or more, but
no, but if you say the youngest are 98, and several of them are over 100. So there was that story. And there was this other story that really profoundly affected many of us in the UK, which is the death of Rob Burrows, who was the rugby. Now, which rugby was it, Adrian?
Rugby league.
Rugby league, yeah. Okay. He was a small man, but absolute
very, very fast.
Dynamite.
And very, very determined. He was a wonderful player, yeah.
And the thing that these people all had in common, I think, and it was mentioned in the D-Day celebrations today, is that they went into the unknown. They had no idea. And that applies to both, I think. Somebody was talking about it's a boy aged 18, and he was saying he'd never been on a boat before, he'd never even been to a beach before. And there you are on one of these boats, facing the unknown.
I found one of the things I found most moving was that listening to these gentlemen speaking about their experience, and to there was a lady there also who hadn't been actually on the beach, but who had an amazing story, but we unfortunately can't tell them all. But what struck me about them was that punch in the mouth that was landing on D-Day is still hurting. The shock of it.
Oh, absolutely.
The appalling sight of, right at the very beginning, seeing their fellow soldiers drowning, struggling.
Yes, before they even got
shocked.
To the beach. Yes.
Yeah, and a couple of other things. One was the fact that there was a man, I don't know what his rank was, but his role was to walk across the beach in a very steady, calm manner, saying, "Come on, lads, here we go." And to take on that role, to be someone who is steady at a time when it's impossible for anybody else to be, is quite something. And of course, the piper, there was a man who was
I think we may have mentioned him last week. These people that just took it upon themselves to do what they've always done in order to keep people going. I don't know. I know. I don't even need to say it. It's been the most extraordinarily moving day. But the reason that I connected it with Rob Burrows is that he too, that moment when you get a diagnosis like he got. He was 41 when he died this week. 41. An incredibly fit person facing that diagnosis of motor neuron, which, as we know, has no cure, and it will end in death, and the road that you're going to be on is just a horrifically difficult one, not just for you, but for your family and for your friends.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I feel the shock of his death. He has had a wonderful family who obviously will be devastated. But
and an amazing friend.
Yeah, an amazing friend.
And the thing I think about Kevin, his surname.
It's gone.
Sorry, the guy who's done all these marathons for him, is that never ever does he allow the focus, the spotlight to be on him and what he's doing, raising awareness, running this. It is always about Rob Burrows, because he sees the day-to-day courage, or has seen day by day. He said this is the day he'd hoped would never come, on the day that Rob Burrows died a few days ago. And the coincidence of these two things seemed quite significant to me, really.
It's really difficult to sort it out, I think, because I was trying to think about courage, and there are all sorts of things that everybody says about courage. I was remembering, we've mentioned it before, Mike Tyson's boxer's extraordinary comment that a plan is all right until someone punches you in the mouth, and that's, I think, why I mentioned that earlier, that when these guys went to the beach there and were about to land, they had no idea, most of them, what was going to happen at that point.
I don't know how they could have done.
So in terms of choice, there wasn't much choice left. They were in the army. They were told they were going to go, and they went. So obviously there had to be assent to that. But then, when you reached the beach and you saw people dying around you, you were faced with another question about how you would handle what was going to happen. And I suppose what occurred to me, which is a bit hackneyed really, but I think it's true, that courage is not about not being afraid.
No.
Courage is about often being terrified.
Yes.
And what you do with that.
Yes.
And where you go after it. And again, to quote poor old Winston Churchill, we do so often, it's sometimes not enough to do to do your best, you have to do what is required. And I think when that moment comes, and Rob Burrows and those who've helped him will know what this means, that there comes a moment where you have to pick yourself up and do the thing that is going to be the right thing, and the thing that will help or push forward whatever is required for others. And the elderly men speaking about their experiences 80 years ago.
I know.
But one of them said, well, nothing really. He said, nothing, we were just ordinary blokes.
Yes.
We weren't talking about heroes.
No.
Talking about people who were suddenly faced with the requirement of heroism.
Yes.
And at that moment...
But they all were, as they keep saying, don't they, that they were all faced with that, and a few of them came back. Sometimes 14 came back out of out of over 100 in one particular part of it. It's very difficult to get one's head into it. What it would have been like. I think the thing that struck me, you said about them being afraid. I mean, the person, I haven't got his name in front of me, but the person who designed that amazing monument that we can now see if we went over the new monument. And he said he had to change it because when the veterans saw it, the ones who saw it, they said no. They look too cocky. They look too sure, too confident. They don't look afraid. Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. He said they didn't look frightened enough, and so he changed it. Yeah. The fear, the terror, and the absolutely awfulness of it. They have tried to get that over today. So there were no, some of the films that we saw just after the war, they were very. The good old Brits or the good old Americans, whichever film it was, they went striding in. They tend to be quite chisel-jawed, and then there were sentimental, beautiful moments when they sat with their friend who was dying. That's not what it was. You had to step over the friend who had died. And I think that's something that perhaps even until today I probably hadn't really, really thought through.
I think that's why they still look shocked.
Yes.
I think that's what struck me about veterans for years, that the shock doesn't seem to go. I know one man never said anything to his wife about what had happened, and wished he had. She died, and he really, really wished he'd been able to bring out from inside himself the horror of what had happened to him. But
and people changed. I mean, they did change, didn't they? People who'd seen... I understand that. I mean, I have a relative for whom he never talked about it, having seen many, many of his friends die. Yeah. Because to face it, to go there, who's going to understand? Who is going to understand? And so maybe you think, I can't process this. And that, if we come back to Rob Burrows for a moment, and we have known it with another lovely friend of ours who died very young, but who knew she was going to die, as Rob Burrows did. There was no cure. There was no cure for the cancer that our friend had. But the children were part of that journey towards death in Rob Burrows' case and in the case of our friend. And so obviously it's still a profound shock. But seeing these little girls, and his little boy I think is a bit too young to be really understanding it, but seeing them so proud of their daddy, and Rob Burrows' wife so proud of her husband, the physical breakdown of his body was nothing compared with what was inside him. And looking at some of these really ancient people sitting there rather cold and I'm sure very tired actually during this ceremony, I thought, right inside them, never mind that their bodies are falling to bits, inside them is still something still marching on, if you like.
I remember you talking about our friend and their daughter, who I got to know a bit at the time, after her mum had died, saying to me, obviously had thought about the question she wanted to ask. She was only
little
or
then.
5
Yeah,
then.
yeah,
And she said, no one wants to talk about Mummy being
Yeah.
dead.
yeah,
And because people wanted to protect her from, I suppose, from thinking about the fact she had no mum, all that. But actually, all she wanted was to be able to just talk for a very short time
yeah.
about how she felt and then go and play and do something.
And don't you think that that's been one of the strengths? I mean, I only know the UK one. I know we have friends in Australia and Canada and America who will have been to different ceremonies today or listened to different things. But I just felt for these people to have their stories heard, sometimes read by actors, but sometimes just being allowed to tell their bit of the story and be heard, and it not being closed down.
No, just get it out.
Get
Yeah.
it out.
But there are other tensions that are really difficult to talk about. I mean, one or two of the elderly guys said, well, we didn't really do anything, we were
Yeah.
told what to do and we went out and we did it.
Yeah, that's why they don't want to be considered heroes, because a hero is somebody who puts on
that's
your
right,
superhero
yeah,
outfit
yeah.
and goes out to save the world.
And it's actually not very good for anybody to apparently learn that you have to be a hero to be brave.
No.
And obviously I thought about Jesus. I always think about Jesus, but
Well, he was
there was,
mentioned.
he was
during
mentioned, but somebody said in the end of a talk he'd gone to his
Just the
death.
prayer.
He'd gone to his death without. I can't remember what the word was, but the implication was that he'd been staunch and strong and just went.
Yes.
It's not true.
No.
The actual words that he spoke apparently in the Garden of Gethsemane were, "My grief is so great that it almost crushes me." I think he was terrified. But to go back to that point about courage, it wasn't about whether he was scared or not.
No.
It was about whether he would do the thing that was required. And that's the real lesson for people, I think,
Yeah.
that you may not be a very extraordinary person or have any particular strengths, but when it comes to that moment, you have the same choice as everybody
Yes.
about whether you're going to.
And so many people we
go
know,
and do
Adrian,
it.
are facing either health diagnoses or the sort of diagnosis where you are aware that you are losing somebody while they're still alive through dementia, through illness, that your life, their life is never going to be the same. We underestimate the courage that so many, as you say, one of these guys said, we're just ordinary people. Well, there are no jolly ordinary people. There are just people.
We're only people,
Some people
yeah,
who think
yeah.
they're not ordinary, and they're the ones who put a lot of other people in danger. But most people are ordinary. Where are these other ones? And it's ordinary people who have sometimes the challenge of being incredibly brave and resilient and courageous. And our chief banana hater and whatever in chief is one of them.
She
But
is
so
one
are
of them,
many
yeah.
others.
She's a wonderful person in many ways, and can't talk about that now. But I think
The day-to-day loneliness
Yeah.
of people who've been bereaved, Adrian, who have to
Yeah.
keep getting up
yeah,
and getting on with it
Yeah.
and being brave. People who are coping with depression, but still getting up and trying to get on with the day.
So
I
we
mean,
met with a friend a week or so ago, didn't we? Who has been going through perpetual troubles. She's elderly and has had a lot of treatment, and the
Yeah.
treatment has been worse than the illness, which it does seem
the
to so
side
often.
effects, yes. Yeah.
So one of her decisions, which is both brave and inevitable, I think, is to stop having treatment. That
Well, it might be, yeah,
makes the last part of her life worse than it might otherwise have been.
Yeah.
So it's so not simple. I do understand that. I haven't been through this myself, but I've had scary times, and I've been on the edge of possibly something tragic happening, and I've been worried about how I would react to something really bad happening. I don't know. I don't think I would know who I am in that context until I was faced with it and had to.
The bottom line of today, I have to say, my memory, if I'm thinking about it, is it's not just the stories. It's just the sweet joy in some of these very, very old people when they receive a beautiful white flower from a primary school French kid who has been taught the story, or a hug, or the king, or the queen. Actually sitting and talking to them. I just love the fact that today they were special.
And of course, thousands who never made it are also special.
Which is what they kept saying and wanted to say.
Anyway, it was both moving and harrowing and very thought-provoking, and I'm glad that
and
we
as to say,
we
I
watched all
know
that.
that for people from Canada watching their own ceremonies, Australia, I know the whole Commonwealth, as the King said, people of different faiths, people of no faith, they were all part of it. Yeah.
So if you are scared, if you're frightened, we all get scared, we all get frightened. It's what you do next that will make the difference. So I wish you well with that. It's not easy, but I really do.
And we'd love to hear from you as always.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Speak to you next week.